So thanks everybody for joining today. If you haven't been to a workshop, welcome. And if you're back for more, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about landscaping. And like Sharana said, just go ahead and chat if you have any questions or, want to hear about something specific. There probably isn't too many people on the call. So if you are more comfortable, you can press the raise your hand button and then we can actually talk to each other. These workshops are typically in person and meant to be a hands-on kind of learn as you do, but we're gonna do it virtually until things settle down with COVID. So yeah, it's still meant to be interactive, so please don't hesitate to chime in with questions and I'll do my best to answer. Michaela is my videotaper. She's also a great landscaper, so she's gonna help me with anything that I'm stumped on. And yeah, I'm gonna show you kind of go through tools and a few basics for starting a landscaping project and like doing maintenance on your gardens. And then we can walk around this yard, which we've done some landscaping on, and just talk through some stuff a little bit more. We have already had a garden workshop a couple weeks ago, and in that workshop we kind of went through more of kind of the technical parts about like soil and growing and transplanting. I'm not going to go into that as much. I'm going to try to focus more on like a overall landscaping project. But we can certainly touch over anything if people are interested. Yeah, and if any of you guys came to the last one, a garden bed, I'll show you some of the stuff that we didn't talk about in that workshop that we'll talk about tonight. Sound good? And I'll stop periodically just to ask if anybody has questions. Okay, so to start, I'm going to go through some of the basic tools that I would need or want for any kind of garden, landscaping, maintenance. And I'll start with kind of some of my smaller hand tools. So this is like a 3-set combo here that you'll get like at any hardware or garden store. First one being a little trowel. It's like a mini shovel, right? This is great for digging out small plants, digging out weeds, just moving soil, dirt, anything around. This one, I'm not sure its official name, but it's got these like 2 little prongs. And this is great for really like digging in to get the roots of weeds out, which we'll talk about the importance of that. And then this one is like a little pitchfork rake kind of tool. I don't know the official name.
Mini pitchfork, mini shovel.
Yeah. Next, I got some clippers. So this is like a small hand set of clippers. And all of these are, less than probably $5 a piece, or you can get them in a combo. So I would definitely recommend getting that to get started on your landscaping. These are great for trimming, bushes, shrubs. If you want to cut off some flowers to bring inside, a small handheld pair of these is great. And these come in different sizes based on the diameter of the branch. So I think this one is like a 1/4. So if the thickness of the branch is a 1/4 or less, you can use it with this, and then you can just scale up if you have bigger projects to work on. Then I got a big pair of clippers, and this is like the same version, but this can go a much larger diameter. So this would be great for like trees or big shrubs. Okay, moving on up to some of the bigger things. I got a drip line and some weed blocker that we're going to go through how to use and what you would use that for in a little bit. And then some other basic tools. I got my rake here. I got this tool that kind of looks like a scraper, and this is going to be great for kind of clearing out vegetation. And then I got an edger, and this one has a nice rounded blade, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. So basically I'm going to try to gear this towards either if you're doing garden maintenance or if you're wanting to start to make, you know, a garden bed. So if, let's say you're starting in your yard that's just kind of totally covered in grass, you know, you have a blank canvas as to what you want to do with the yard. So if you, let me pan over to just the grass. If your yard is just covered in this, and you want to put some garden beds in, that's great. If you have a lot of area to clear and it's pretty dense with like grass and stuff, I would recommend getting some kind of machinery to help pull that out. So one option is getting a sod cutter, which essentially you can rent from, you know, Lowe's or a local hardware garden store, but it basically has like a roller that rolls on top of the ground and this blade that runs you know, in line with the ground, and it kind of cuts under as it goes along, and then you can roll out sod. So it'll just kind of cut out your grass strip, and this is great because it gets underneath the grass and gets all the roots out, and it's a lot easier than, you know, trying to hand pick everything. So if you're going to do a big section or you're just wanting to get it done kind of quick, you can rent those for, you know, like 40 or 50 bucks for a few hours or a day, and just save yourself a lot of time and energy. If you don't want to go that route, that's when our kind of scraper tool comes in handy. So if I need to just kind of get all the way under to kind of clear cut an area, you could use this to just dig out and under and then pull out all that stuff. The reason that this is important is because if we're going to try to plant new plants and we want a nice garden and we want those plants to be successful, we need to get all of the other competition essentially out of the way. So if we just try to like throw some mulch over this and plant some stuff, all of those weeds and grass is going to come right back up. So it's really important to start with a fresh, you know, kind of blank canvas. Same thing, like if you wanted to put in a garden box, I would recommend clearing out that area that the box is going to sit foremost before you do anything else. Any questions on that, on how you kind of get started getting an area?
You may have said this already, Caitie, but I think I missed it. How deep should we be going down?
Most stuff like grass, the roots aren't super deep, you know, like an inch or two. You'll kind of be able to tell, like if I'm just like kind of pulling out, like if you can see this, I just pulled out, I got a bunch of root with it. So that one came out really easy. So when you start pulling up, it's going to depend on like every person's yard, but as long as you're getting the roots out, that's the important part. So the depth is not, you know, a cut and dry answer, but the goal is to get the roots out. The other thing you can do is after you kind of scrape up and get out all the green stuff, you can go back through with your rake like this, which is kind of combed, and just kind of dig up the soil or use a hoe and kind of almost till it. Like we're mixing it up, we're kind of churning it, and then we can rake out for any other roots that we might have missed. You know, we want to get out as much as possible, but if the roots aren't connected to something green and poking up, it's not going to continue to live. So, you know, it's only a matter of time until it starts to decompose into the soil and give us some nutrients, right?
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, so this is an area that we actually cleared out, this whole kind of bed back in March, and it was totally covered in this like ivy ground cover, and we ripped out all of that. As you can see, it's grown back. That's to be expected. But yeah, this is pretty good. This was like completely covered. We'll have to show you what the front yard looks like for comparison, but it is going to take a little while. You're not going to get every root, so stuff is going to come back. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just that's how plants work. They want to grow. So that's something that once you've cleared it, we're going to just have to weed this as maintenance. And the same thing applies, like whenever we're weeding something, we want to really kind of pull out all the roots. So if I'm getting these roots out, that's great. If not, it's going to grow back a lot quicker. So that's when you could use one of your hand tools. So if I'm pulling something out and I'm just getting like, you know, kind of the leaf off of it, the method I like to use is kind of like circle around it and pinch and pull up. If I'm not getting all these roots, then I can use this tool to kind of dig down and pull out, right? Kind of locate. This is gonna help me break up the soil. Then when I go to grab these, now I'm getting lots of roots. That's what we wanna see, right? Same thing, you could use your trowel, and on a smaller scale, this fork, same thing, like I can dig down, and if I'm finding more roots that I missed, go ahead and pull those out. And for all your like weed, that's a great thing to put in your yard waste bin and kind of get out of your yard. A lot of weeds are invasive, so if you leave any of them, it's going to keep spreading. So the more you can like pull it out and get it out, it's great. And I thought we would cover this too in terms of like what is a weed and what's not a weed. Essentially, a weed is anything that you don't want to be in your garden. So there's some like dandelions that are almost always considered weeds, but then there's stuff like clover. Some people love clover. It's you know, a beautiful flower. It's a great ground cover. So some people might want that in their garden, and therefore it's not a weed for them. Other people might not want it in their garden, so it would be a weed for them. I hope that kind of makes sense. So essentially, yeah, any weeds we're going to try to pull out to start with, and for our maintenance. Okay, next I'm going to go into edging, which is essentially like we're creating an edge or a border to kind of define our area. And there's lots of different ways that this could look. I'm going to show you just briefly a few of the options. So now I have my edger tool, which you could get an edger for, you know, 15, 20 bucks like this one, or you could just use a shovel. They have some shovels that are like a skinnier blade, which is nice, or just your regular spade shovel. I like this one just because it helps, like this rounded part makes it nice to do kind of curves. So it makes it look pretty smooth. So basically, if I wanted to create an edge, the goal is to kind of separate out where my mulch garden bed is going to be, or my, you know, vegetables or whatever, and where my grass line stops. So you want to create some kind of border, and we did this one a while back, and it looks like the edge is probably about here. So to do this, stomp down, just kind of twist it like this. It's going to pull up the dirt a little bit, which is okay. And then you can really do this, you know, basically to whatever your preference is. So I'm just going to kind of keep going around like this to create my edge. And then there's a few different options of what to do next. So the method we used on this yard was we basically created our first line and then created another line about that much, about a few inches apart. And then we used our trowel to dig this section out. And we created like this little trough right here. And the purpose of this is just to kind of create a larger gap between my mulch garden bed and my grass. And this essentially helps weeds not, you know, transfer between the bed and the grass. So my grass is less likely to come into my garden bed and get weeds in this area. So that's one method to do. You don't have to do it like that, but that is a nice one to, you know, kind of keep your garden bed where they go. Okay, we can flip around over here. Another option, as you can see over here, is having like a hard edge. And so this is like some metal that's driven into the ground and then connected in pieces, and kind of comes around and creates our bed. This is another, you know, same thing. It's an edge. It helps prevent grass from coming into my bed. This is a hard edge. So it's a very clearly defined border. A little bit more expensive on the startup, but probably better long-term. The edge that I showed you over there, that's something you're gonna have to kind of continually maintain like year to year. You could also do like a rock border if you wanted to, which maybe we'll go look at the stone wall in the front. But this one and like a paving block or something like that, that's another option for an edge or a border. And the other benefit to using this hard border or the rock is that, you know, you can go a little bit higher up. So like this section is kind of like on a bit of a slope here. So this is really going to keep all my soil and all of my mulch over here, and it's not going to run off into this like lower section of the yard. So that's, you know, some pro con for some of the different options for edging. Any questions on edging? Feel free to chat or raise your hand or unmute if you need to or want to ask.
It's maybe gonna thunderstorm on us.
We're getting a little bit of thunder, so we're just gonna keep plugging through. Okay, so now we've got our area clear cut, we've got our edge, border all in place, nicely defined. Next thing that we can do, if you want, is to use some weed blocker. So a couple different methods for this. You don't have to use weed blocker, like that's not a requirement, but if you just clear cut an area, it's a good idea just because you know that stuff is gonna come back. And it's gonna cut down on how much time you have to spend weeding your garden. So, you know, you can always go for the, you know, kind of chemical spray. I don't really love those. It's not super great for your plants, so I kind of try to stay away from that and go with a more natural option if possible. So one way, or one option, is to use cardboard. So you can lay cardboard down flat, and then you would need to put more soil on top of that, of course, but the cardboard is cool because, you know, you're recycling something and it's going to eventually decompose, and that's going to, you know, add nutrients and compost to your soil. So that's kind of a cool way to do it, and hopefully it's free. So that's another bonus. The downside to using cardboard is it's not going to last as long as something, you know, kind of more processed, but if you want to, that's a cool option. So this stuff is, this is also recycled. It's made out of soda bottles, which is pretty cool. So this is another, you know, natural recycled weed barrier is what it's called. And this is like a 3-foot section. You can get them in longer sections. This is the shortest one at the store, but basically it's, well, I'm gonna open it up and we're gonna do it. So this is gonna be great for blocking our weeds and stuff from coming up. Right. Okay. So, kind of hard, but I don't know if you can kind of see this. It's kind of like a meshy, little synthetic material. And basically, don't do it over weeds, but you would want to clear cut or clear it first. But basically, we're going to just roll this out over our edge. And I would start, you know, if you have like a flat edge, like if you're doing it up against a fence, I would start on your flat side and work your way towards your edge or your border that might be curved. And then when you get to that point, we'll just kind of cut it. So let's see if I can do an edge just so I can demonstrate that point. Okay, so I kind of got it rolled out, and then there are these little pins or like stakes, basically. Could you see that?
Mhm.
These guys look like this. So they're a few inches long, and this is what we're going to put in to hold our weed blocker down. So I got a hammer. You don't need a hammer this big. Okay, so I want to start this at an edge. So I'm going to go kind of closer to my edge here. And this pin is great because, as you can see, it's got like a wide top to it. So that's really going to help press down a larger area as opposed to like a nail or something that would just poke right through and not really hold it. So I'm just going to tap that down in place like that. And then as I do this, I want to make sure I'm holding it kind of tight. So I don't want like big ripples in it like this. I want this all the way tight to the ground. And then I don't know how many it recommends putting in, but I would say go kind of closer on the edges and then pull this tight. When we're in the field here like this, you know, we can go maybe about a foot apart. Like this. Okay, so we would kind of just carry this out for however long we want it to go. And then, like I said, if we had our border that's kind of coming in here, stuff is pretty easy to cut. I just have a razor knife here. And so I could just cut this right along, you know, my edge. So if I have a curve that comes out like this and goes back in, that's fine. You know, it's gonna cut and pull apart pretty easy. Just like that. So, and then whenever you're laying down pieces, you want to overlap them a couple inches. So I'm not gonna, you know, put stakes in this edge. I'm gonna overlap my next piece to like here, and then go ahead and put one stake through both layers. That's an easy way to do it. And it's easier to cut when you're kind of holding it kind of taut. Okay, so that's our weed blocking option, one of them. Okay, so then on top of this weed blocker, this is obviously not our finished look. On top of this, we would need to put soil and then, you know, some kind of soil mix, compost, potting soil. You know, I don't know a ton about the technical, you know, composition of soil, but some of that is also plant specific. So you can kind of look that up depending on what you're planning on planting. So then with this weed blocker, if we knew we were going to put a plant in here, we obviously don't want to block our plant from growing. So what we would do is cut like a little, let's make it a little bigger so it's easier to see, basically an X running through. So I got these flaps that come up. I already did this section, right? So there's nothing else under here. And then what you do is you just roll these under. So they roll under pretty easy. Just kind of flip it and tuck it under. Right, and then I got my spot for my plant to go. So at that point I could, you know, dig out a little hole, kind of move some of my existing soil out of the way, plant my plant, and then kind of fill the soil around it. So yeah, don't totally cover up your weed blocker until you know kind of where your stuff is going to go. You could fill in soil around it and then just kind of, you know, arrange around the plant. So any questions on that, feel free to chat or chime in. Let's see what else I got.
I have a question.
Yep.
Could you put this down over a plant like that?
You can
Like,
put it around it. Yeah, yeah, we could cover, like if we had an existing plant, we could definitely make that work. What I would probably do is, you know, run my roll pretty close to normal, and then you can just cut like a slit wherever, you know, wherever our, like if we were doing this tree or that bush, I would just cut out an area that it goes and kind of peel back, wrap around, and then you can trim just right around the like stem or trunk of whatever, and then just tack it around, you know, wherever you cut. So yeah, you could do this over something existing. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so let's see. After we've gotten our plants in, next thing I would recommend doing is mulching. So I think a lot of people are under the impression that mulch is just for, you know, kind of aesthetic and like looking good. And I also thought that for a while until I worked with our great landscaping friend who told us some of the like many benefits of mulch. And after looking into it some more, I think that mulch is probably like best bang for your buck thing you could do to like keep your garden growing well and growing successfully. So some of those benefits is, one, it helps keep moisture in your plants. So if your plants are just sitting in soil that's baking in the sun, it's gonna, you know, a lot of that moisture and rain and time you spend watering is just gonna evaporate right out. So that mulch helps kind of hold that moisture down in your plants, and that's great. Another thing, it helps block weeds. So, you know, if we put down a few inches of mulch, it's going to help keep our weeds from popping up all the time, which is more beneficial for our plants.
We could show that path over there that didn't have mulch on it that we weeded.
Oh yeah, we'll have to kind of show you some before and after sections. That's what Michaela's recommending, of some spots that we did mulch and then spots that we did not mulch, so you can kind of see the difference. Okay, so another thing that it does, mulch does, is it helps moderate your soil temperature, which at first I was like, well, what does that have to do with? But this is great for new plants and small plants, because, you know, when you have a small plant or maybe something that I'm just transplanting into this spot, this plant has like really small roots that are kind of trying to grow down and out and, you know, take root. So if this soil is just baking in the sun, it's going to like affect those roots. So that plant is not going to be able to establish itself really well. If you put mulch down, it's essentially like insulation, right? It's going to block some of the harshness from the sun and kind of keep that temperature nice and even, so it's not going to be fluctuating too much, and that stability is great for small plants and new plants. So I learned something new on that one. Another great benefit of mulch is it prevents runoff and erosion. So especially if I have like a steeped bed or something, I get a big rain or big wind, all of that topsoil and compost and nutrients that's going into my plants, all of that is just going to be washing off. So if we keep our mulch in, it's going to, you know, help that not happen as much. And if it does cause some runoff, some erosion, it's going to be taking the mulch, right? Not my soil and my nutrients that's helping my plants grow.
Oh, sorry, my hand was in front of it.
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
We are getting a little bit of rain. I'm going to stick it out, but if it gets crazy, we're going to go into the garage. So
we're in a different state. Sorry if you guys
Yeah,
are confused by why we have rain and you don't.
Okay, another one is it helps block disease, which I also didn't know, but essentially diseases that already exist in the soil, the mulch is going to act as like a buffer to help those diseases not spread onto your plants, which is cool. And then the mulch, the last thing, which is like full circle here, it's going to decompose and then put more nutrients into the soil, which is really great. So it's essentially like you're kind of composting as you grow. So I have some mulch here that I'm going to do a brief demonstration. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? We're going to be putting this on top of our garden bed. So I just filled up a little bit here in this bucket. So if I got a big section like this, kind of spread it around a little bit. You want to put it on pretty thick. So if I'm covering this area here, basically, I kind of want it, you know, up to about here on my hand. So kind of mid knuckle. You know, you could do this. I don't know if you have a different preference or whatever, but about up to, you know, kind of a finger length is good. So that's going to add all of those benefits like we talked about. And then we would just continue this wherever we're going, you know, wherever our garden bed is. Once we get to a plant, we don't want to mulch, you know, right up all around of our plant stem. So if I'm going around, you know, I just planted something here. Here you go. Plant, and I'm going to put some mulch around this.
It's harsh. It doesn't. Yeah. So the like the stem of the plant or the trunk of the tree, they don't like moisture being kept in close to them. It's just not good for the plant. So we like to kind of give them some room to breathe, so we don't pack the mulch right up close to the stem or the trunk of the tree.
I couldn't remember why, but Michaela saved the day. So basically what I would do is just create like a little trough around it. Yeah, which is gonna get a little bit stormy. That's gonna keep that moisture from like sticking right to the trunk of the tree, which is perfect. And then we could just do that around all of our plants. If you have like bulbs or something, this might be a good time to walk to some of the other sections of the yard.
Okay.
So let's go look at these, which I can't remember the name of. But if you have
The little irises.
yeah, if you have something like this, irises, I would just mulch kind of right around the outside. You don't have to put mulch right on top of it. So we can kind of just go around the border of this plant like that. I'll talk about the drip line real quick. So I wanted to briefly go into this kind of drip line hose system. So this is 50 foot of hose, and basically water just comes out of this line. This would attach into my hose, like a spigot, or if you could run a garden hose to your irrigation line, and then this would be to connect to another line if you wanted to, or you leave it capped and it'll just stop right there. So what this looks like in reality is like so. So I have this strip hose in the walkway. It's not ideal, but basically this line is just running kind of through my plants here, and then loops up over here, comes back around, kind of makes a full circle here in my garden. So this is basically, if you don't want to hand water all of your gardens all the time, you can hook up to this irrigation hose and leave it on for, you know, an hour, and depending on the hose irrigation and how much water your plants need, it'll tell you like how much water it's giving per time that it's on. So it's like a gallon per foot per hour. So if I have a 50-foot hose and I leave that on for an hour, it's going to be 50 gallons of water in my hose. I don't know if that's standard, so just look at the one you get. But that's a great alternative, and it seems to me like a little bit gentler than, you know, like a garden hose can kind of be intense. So especially for like, you know, some more delicate flowers, this is great. It's going to drip right near where the roots are of my plant. So that is a great alternative.
And it saves time.
Yeah, and it saves time, so you don't have to water over and over again. Okay, so we got some more of that drip irrigation down here, which you can see, and some more of our bulbs. So I don't know if you guys can kind of look at the roots. So these are the roots of my bulbs here, and as you can see, they're exposed, which they like to be exposed. So we don't want to put mulch like right on top of that. That's gonna
pour.
Get pretty rainy. It's okay. We'll keep going. Okay. If you want to go inside, you can.
It's okay. I can do it.
I wanted to show the stone wall down here and this ground cover, which I forgot about. Okay, so we're walking to the front yard of the same house here, and I wanted to show you guys this ground cover over here. So this is the stuff that we pulled out of that back bed. So as you can see, it's not a weed up here because we want this ground cover, right? It's really beautiful, kind of natural area in the yard. Same thing applies, right? We have an edge going around it. You can kind of see the separation between the grass in the yard and the ground cover and kind of natural area over here. And so it looks like a lot came back, but considering what we started with, we got a lot. We pulled out a lot of weeds, right? We're getting some nice rain. I don't know if you guys can hear the thunder. But... Okay, let's pan over here. So this over here is, I wanted to show you guys another example of like a edge or border you could do. And this is just some kind of natural stacked stones, right? So I just got a few layers up here. That's creating an edge, and this is like a kind of rain gutter here.
It's also nice because it can help you even out a slope in the yard.
Right, it can help us even out a slope. And this one almost acts as like a retaining wall, which is sort of a different category, which you should definitely do your research if you're going to retaining wall.
Caitie, I think that your volume, you guys went on mute there for a second. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute again. There we go.
Good?
Yeah, the screen was wet. Sorry.
Okay. So basically I was just saying, like with a retaining wall, you want to be careful of how much weight is going to be pushing on that wall. So like this small wall, it's only about a foot. I'm not really carrying too much weight, like my soil and dirt isn't pushing out on that wall. If you're going to build a retaining wall that's a few feet tall, you need to have extra supports so that that wall is stable and can hold the weight. And that's kind of a whole project in itself, but it's a great way for a slope to even out a yard, even out a space. Okay, what else? I feel like I had some more stuff to talk about. Oh, I did want to talk about trimming a little bit. Might need to find a tree. I wonder if we go back to where we started.
Find a tree. I wonder where one would be.
Find a good tree to practice trimming. Well, I guess actually let's look at this bush. We'll do a couple examples. So if I'm trimming something, either just like regular maintenance, or, well, I'll just stick to that. So if I want to cut back some of these branches, like let's say that's encroaching on my walkway or, you know, my hedge height, you can just like buzz it straight off if you like that look, but it's not the best for the plants. So if you want to encourage your plants to kind of continue growing, what you would want to do is, if you find the branch that you want to cut, which is this one for me, I'm going to follow this all the way back until where it meets in with the, you know, kind of main part of the tree or shrub, and cut it off from there. And so that's going to encourage it to kind of regrow, which this one, it's about all the way down here in my plant, right?
But you could also cut it like right here if you wanted to.
Right. So if I wanted to you know, not do something that drastic. Like let's say I wanted to keep these ones on the side, but I just didn't want my top, I would follow that to here and cut it off at this stem.
So wherever there's a junction.
Yeah, pretty much wherever there's a junction. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So I don't want to just kind of cut off these leaves like this. That's going to, you know, grow back right away, and it doesn't look very good, and it's not great for the plant. So, yeah, we're going to want to cut that at a junction. It's a good way to say it. The other thing that is a good regular maintenance on your plants is cutting off any stuff that's dead. So if I have, like, looking here at these irises, if I have little, you know, kind of dead leaves, stuff like that, I want to go ahead and pull those out or cut those whenever I see them. Basically, once it's at that point, it's not coming back, and it's essentially taking energy from your plants and putting it into this thing that's not going to grow anymore.
Can I give a fun fact?
Yeah.
So something fun about the irises is if they have any of the leaves that have these dead parts on them, you can just kind of peel them back and they'll just come right off. Oops, I didn't film it. Kind of like an onion skin. Like they just come right off really easily. So don't be afraid to pull those off. The rest of the plant will be fine.
Yeah, and that's good maintenance. It's actually going to make your plant stronger. It's better for your plant. So you're taking all those like avenues of sending energy and kind of streamlining it into the stuff that you want to grow. Right? Same thing for like dead tree branches. We trimmed some off of this tree that was like, you know, we had a few different offshoots of the tree, and especially for bigger trees, like one, it's dead, it's not growing, it's taking away energy from a tree, but it's also dangerous. So if I take off this dead limb, I'm in control of when it happens. If I'm just letting this like kind of dead and dormant part of the tree sit there, it's, you know, it's at a risk to fall at any point. So if you're doing that as part of your regular maintenance, it's not going to fall on any of your plants. It's not going to fall on you. It's just a safer way to go about, keeping your yard looking great. So I feel like we should look at our garden bed that we cleared out again, just to like keep in mind how great that, you know, start to finish is. How much of that ground cover we started with, and this is all that came back, and this is also, you know, a variety of other weeds. So here's an area that looks like our some of our grass is kind of coming in. If I saw this happening year after year, I might consider putting in kind of a harder border here, just to cut down on how much I have to pull that back, or, you know, pull that out. Okay, so this area kind of right here, this is a path that we also cleared out when we did this garden bed, and the garden bed got mulched. The path was just plain dirt, did not get mulched. So this is how much it grew back with, you know, no other variables. We didn't put a weed blocker down on either one. Mulch, right? Mulch, no mulch. This is how much the weeds came back. So when we were talking about that, how mulch helps to kind of suppress weeds, there's a great example of what it actually looks like. Okay, I got one other cool thing to talk about. I'm gonna the leaf mold.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm kind of getting to the end of my regularly scheduled
Programming.
Yes. So if you guys have any questions, like project specific or about anything we talked about, start thinking about those. All right. So I don't know how much I want to go under this.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so one other cool thing I wanted to talk about that our friend living at this house does in her yard is leaf mold, which is essentially composting leaves. So when your leaves all fall in the fall, instead of raking those up and bagging them and sending them out, you can save those leaves and turn it into compost that you can use in the spring, which is a great sustainable way to garden. And it's also free, right? So you don't have to spend money on, you know, expensive compost and, you know, all of this stuff. You can take the nutrients that's already existing and that's native to your yard and use that to continue growing your plants, right? So our leaves just fell. You want to do this when the leaves are kind of fresh, right? So we're going to rake them up right away, and you can do this in batches. So like, you know, however often your yard is ready to be raked. Rake up our leaves, and we're going to put them in like a cage like this. It's got some kind of, you know, like chicken wire or some kind of like fencing around. We're going to throw all of our leaves in here, and then we're going to wet it down. So, you know, spray it over with our hose for a while. And then we're going to use our lawnmower and kind of put it over our leaves. And that's going to cut them up into smaller pieces. And this is essentially just, you know, kind of expediting the decomposition that's going to happen within their leaves. So it's just making them into smaller pieces that makes it go a little bit faster. So we're going to cut them up. We're going to put some moisture in it, and then we're going to cover it up with a tarp like this one. And then we're going to let it sit all winter and come back in the spring, and it's going to be leaf mold or leaf compost, and it's going to be ready to use for our plants. So this is a super easy way to, you know, use stuff that's already existing in your yard, that's sustainable, that's free, and it's ready to go by spring. So this isn't like some composting. It takes a really long time to get, you know, the kind of development that we're looking for in terms of nutrients. But with the leaves, they're ready in for the next growing season, right? So you could do this in the fall and it's ready to go by spring, which is a great way. And then we would just use this like compost or fertilizer and kind of spread it around our plants, and they're going to grow. And it's native to our yard, which is important because we don't want to bring in anything that's invasive, right? So it started here, it's staying here, which is super great for gardening and planting. So you can also take the leaves from your gutters and throw them in here, which is great. Yeah. Cool. That's about everything I had planned to talk about. If anybody has questions, that would be great. I don't know if you guys can hear that thunder, but it's getting kind of wild over here. I'm happy to answer any questions or keep showing you guys around the yard that's got some other cool stuff. Maybe we should go to the front patio in case anybody has questions. Shauna, if you have questions. Michaela, if you have questions. Answer questions.
So Caitie, do you have any tips for people who have a lot of rock in their yard? As we're thinking about landscaping and things like that, do you think that we need to remove the rocks before doing that? Or is there a way to kind of, any tips you have?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, Washington's got a lot of rocky soil, right? So yeah. Rocks aren't necessarily a bad thing. It definitely is hard if you are like trying to clear out an area or dig at all. You're going to just hit a lot of rocks, which is kind of annoying. They're not bad for your plants in any way. So a couple of things that you could do is, one, look for stuff that does well in kind of rocky soil or drier soil. You should do this regardless, but just kind of get an idea for what your soil is like. And some plants like low light, some plants like sandy soil, some plants like clay soil. So you can do a little bit of research and just see if you can get plants that are better suited to that soil type. But the rocks aren't bad. They're not a problem. They're just kind of annoying when you're digging. Another cool thing that we saw somebody doing at their yard, they had a bunch of rocks in their yard and they dug them out and then used that to make a border wall, which was really cool. So if you have enough that you can get a use out of it, I always try to do that. But you're digging up a bunch, you could, here, let's look down here. If you got like rocks this size, you could use these rocks and just kind of continue with the border. If I wanted to make a border along a path or a garden bed, that's a great option. Hope that helps a little bit. I don't know what else. I'm just kind of showing you guys around the yard now in case anybody has more questions, but
I've got a question for you.
Border in here.
She has a question.
Yeah.
I have, do you have any tips for removing, I guess I would call it like a small tree stump. So I've got a few tree stumps in my yard that are probably 4 to 6 inches in diameter, and then there's some big roots coming off of them.
Yeah.
Other than just digging it out and cutting it up, do you have any tips for how to do that on your own?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just the best way to do it is just to dig it out, probably like you're already thinking. It's kind of a lot of work, but yeah, there's not really a easier way around it, except what I would try to do is if you have like some kind of axe or something like that, you can kind of break up some of those roots. Like if I have a stump here and roots coming off of it, I would try to cut some of those roots so that you're able to move the stump a little bit more. Or you could try to get like a pry bar that'll help kind of lift it up and out. And then once I get that, you know, the actual stump part out, then you can kind of try to work on some of those roots. You're not going to be able to just pick up the whole thing with all these big roots, right? That's kind of too much. But you also don't need to get out all those roots unless they're in your way. So if it's super big and right in the area you're trying to work, I would take it out. But if not, some of those are okay to stay if you can get the stump part itself out.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
And Emily, if you have time in your yard for the small stumps, if you hammer a couple of nails in them over a couple of years, it will eventually disintegrate. I've had to do that with some of the arborvitae things in my yard. Yeah, it kind of accelerates the decomposition by the nails inside the wood, just to FYI. But it does take years. It's not going to happen within a season. But it does.
Really cool.
They do fall apart.
I didn't know that. I wonder how our houses are doing. They're all built with nails.
Live wood, it's all different.
That's funny. Yeah, well, if anybody else has questions, feel free to keep asking. You can also, you know, get my email from Tracy or Sharana if you guys have stuff that you think of later. We're also going to send out the recording of this, so if you want to watch it again or share it with any friends or family, please feel free to do so. We will have, let's see, another workshop. I can't remember the date, but in a couple of weeks, and that one is going to be flooring. So I'm going to go through some laminate and vinyl flooring, which is pretty fun. I believe we're also sending out surveys, so please take a few minutes to fill those out. Any feedback you have for me or the workshops in general, and especially any suggestions of like future topics. We want to keep, stand under the porch. We want to try to keep our workshops going, so we're always looking for new ideas, new suggestions, and especially stuff that you guys are interested in. So please leave us that info. And yeah, if you know anybody who wants to lead or teach a workshop, or if any of you want to, yeah, just don't feel free to contact us, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Caitie. Yeah, September 9th is the next workshop on flooring, which would be really great. Yep. And also, just for those of you that are in the Tacoma area, actually our stores, our Habitat stores just got a bunch of brand new flooring in as one of the items that we're selling. And so they're going pretty hot. It's a pretty hot, there's like 3 or 4 different colors that you can choose from. So if you're looking for something, there could be a discounted floor option at your local Habitat store. Yeah. And then Caitie can show you how to install it.
Caitie? Hopefully.
Sorry, that's my daughter.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, Caitie. This was great.
Great. Thank you, guys.
I want to walk with Maddie.
Nice job, Caitie. Thank you.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thanks for hosting us tonight.
absolutely. Thank you for the work. Yeah, that's a beautiful yard you guys had.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Michaela's
mom's.
parents' yard.
Is it?
But we did a bunch
Beautiful.
of work here back in March, so it's pretty cool to see it again.
Yeah,
now.
it was our quarantine project.
Yeah, this is our quarantine project. So
And I love
But my mom's the real
you were able to
one.
show
She
the
taught us
mulch
everything we know.
versus-
So
That's awesome. No, but the mulch and the no mulch and how much the weeds came back in that short amount of time, that was really cool.
yeah, no, that was Michaela's suggestion, but that was a good idea. Yeah, clear demonstration there.
Clear demonstration. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Just get out of
Sweet.
the rain,
Well-
get dried off. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. See you later.
it's nice to meet you. I was at Habitat before your time, but
Oh, you were?
I heard, yeah, I did AmeriCorps the year before Caitie did in Tacoma. So yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you too. Hope you all are doing okay over there.
We're doing good. This is my daughter, Olive.
Hi, Olive. I love your name. I think that's one of the cutest names I've ever heard, Olive.
Oh.
Thank you. All right. Well, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Okay.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Now, can you go?